Have you ever encountered a spiritual person and wondered why he was affiliated to a physical disease when he was spiritual whole his life? Have you ever wondered if his spiritual powers were not sufficient enough for him to handle his physical sickness or to prevent from having such an experience? Have you ever wondered if that illness had more power than the spiritual powers that he possessed? Or have you pondered on this question for a long time, wondering if spiritual experiences has no hold or no connection with any such physical conditions? If yes, let's seek guidance from an expert. Let's welcome Dr. Nagendra sir, a spiritual mentor, Vedic scholar and a medical doctor. Sir, kindly enlighten us on this inquiry. Is there a connection between having such weird experiences at the physical level and having spiritual experiences, or is there absolutely no connection whatsoever, or is it a prerequisite that if you're spiritual, you should hold the power to handle such physical conditions effectively?
So I think those who are familiar with the series what we are going through, now we are talking about a spiritual person. There is a spirit, from what it comes a spiritual, and there is a person, the human being. Now generally the feel is somebody who has spiritually evolved. Then we feel that he is beyond all the limitations of the physical dimension, including the illness and diseases.
True.
It is true and also not necessarily. Because the person may not be interested at all to get rid of all those things.
Okay.
So as we, in the last episode, we were looking into, there is a physical body, Annamaya, Kosha, and then the prana, that's a energy, less like electricity, that's a pranamaya kosha, and there is a mind. And then what we are calling spirit is something behind that which is guiding me, which we call it as a jiva, or even in depth it is commonly called as a atma. So that is the self we are talking about. So this self, and then any essence of some object or some, not necessarily object, a human being or any creation, we call it as the inner self or the essence.
Okay.
This is what we are calling it as spirit. So when I look at a person who is physical, that is spiritually evolved, and then there is a limitation of the physical dimension, we have to look at two different things. A person is evolved from inside, and then he is going and he is working with the background of spirituality. Spirituality is not disconnecting from the physical or materialistic world. It is getting myself in the higher consciousness, like this is a physical consciousness, and then my mental consciousness, and then beyond that. So this consciousness, whoever is able to get connected with higher consciousness, that person we call it as a spiritually evolved. So now he has got a definite role to play in this plane, the physical plane. So I think this question comes from the background of Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi or even Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, who has been such a big realized soul, still they suffer from this physical illness.
True.
That is in general. But what is in reality that is happening is anything that takes the physical form. What we call physical world is made up of 5 basic elements, like the earth, then the water, fire, air, and then the Akasha Tattva. So when it is coming together, that is the physical form that is taking in. So this is always limited. When I say limited, it has got the tendency to change. That is Jagat. The changing is the need of the physical things. So how the change is happening, that again depends on the nature of the person. So we need to understand these two. Then coming back to the question of whether this person can heal himself or not, again depends on the purpose with which he is trying to give it out. Sometimes it may be just the way he wants to leave the attachment of the physical things and get back, or sometimes even more intensely he is trying to get the complete pain and the violence of the physical world taking inside, and then he is digesting. He is actually sacrificing his body. This has been done many times. So they suffer. In fact, even at home we can see our grandfather or grandmother, of no reason they'll be suffering. But that will take the impact of all these energies. We may call it as negative, but not necessarily negative. Right. They take in and then they absorb, and then so that they create a healthy environment around them. So there are multiple dimensions with which looking into. So in a nutshell, in a summary, yes, the spiritually evolved person may fall sick. He can heal himself if he wants, or he may leave it to itself, saying that this is not a limitation to grow spiritually. In all the dimensions we can look into.
Particularly awestruck at the feeling of compassion that they hold for humanity or their people whom they trust, or the people who I think they are followers, as we call as. But this is something that we fail to understand at the logical level most of the time. But this brings me to another question. We often tend to fall into this doubt that if a person is spiritually evolved, he should have some deep insights, either forecasting or foreseeing the future, or looking at our past and giving us some facts which we never reveal to anybody. So, is there a prerequisite to be a spiritually enlightened master, or is it just that these are some attributes which may or may not be developed at their own interest? Kindly guide us on this.
This is again, see, in this path, nothing is completely linear.
Okay.
When I say in this path is that includes both the materialistic and the physical journey, along with the, instead of calling it as inside, I call it as along with that, together it is going the spiritual journey.
Okay.
So in this, there is no linear path. When a person starts doing or he decides that let me take up this path of a spirituality along with having all this grahastha dharma, what we are generally are looking into. We are a part of the family, we do that. Along with that, we are also taking the path of spirituality, not completely taking out like a sannyasa. Sannyasa is not a concept in Veda at all. It is a later concept where we completely deny, because the purpose of the life is itself is different. So there it comes sannyasa at the later of post-Vedic period, not in the Vedas. Of most of the Veda rishis, they were grihasthas, they had their own family or a bigger family, they had the responsibility. Some of them were actually guiding the king, like Raja Purohita, still they were rishis. So now coming back to this, whether they should be having all this or forget about the one who has already revealed souls, even for a person who initially starts, should he get some kind of a flashes or something, the lights or the colors or some revelation, some beautiful experiences, only then it is spirituality? Not necessarily.
Okay.
It is definitely no. If you get it, enjoy it. If you don't get, even sometimes silence is more beautiful than the sound. In between the music, there will be silence. People will enjoy more the silence than hearing itself. So we need to be careful with that, not to get carried away. If you get it, it's very good, but very important thing is you try to differentiate that from the lower vital energies also giving this kind of an experiences.
But people are always looking for validation. If you project yourself as a spiritual person, then they want some parameters like this so that they feel, okay, he has some superficial parts. So there is this human tendency, right? But this again puts me into another question. If a person holds some insights, as in forecasting the future or giving us some information which excites my mind, is it necessary that the person holding such a potential need not be as spiritually as evolved as we perceive it to be? Is there also a possibility? So is it something like a capacity or probably some sort of an art that is probably developed with our inner mind, which may not put me in the right path always? Is it possible?
Yes. See, spirituality, when we talk, we are talking about the complete inner essence of the entire life.
Okay.
What we are talking about. In that journey, there are multiple levels where we'll be getting into. One such is to have the siddhis. Of course, there is a whole science of what we call it as Jyotish Shastra, where you can look at the cosmic arrangement and then have a prediction. That's a possibility of doing it. Definitely not the must. That is one science. Apart from that, when we are growing in that inner and self, there are times where we get the siddhis, where you can look at what can happen. It's nothing to do with the intelligence. There are such revealed souls which can just put it across what can happen. But that is not a hard and bound, is not within the framework. It's a possibility, but not a necessity. These things we should be careful about that. But if you don't get, still not a problem. This has got nothing to do with the spirituality. Even to be saying that something spiritual should be very morally good, ethically good, this is good to have. These are the background. But this doesn't mean somebody is ethically very good or doing a lot of charity, also need not be spiritually enlightened, because that itself can be ego projecting it out, saying that I need that fame or name, Still, that's another way of. It's a good to have it in the physical world, but that has got nothing to do with the spirituality. This has been elaborately mentioned in many of the Upanishads. How there can be a different kind of, like in different occupations, or even somebody like a Vaishya, whom we take it as something completely different, wrong professions. They are also such enlightened souls. So they also serve in a different way. So this is how the Vedas looking in a vast way. The spirituality is in essence completely, or even a businessman, he can be completely, or Janaka is such a great king.
Yes.
He was doing all the activities of the what the king should do, but completely detached.
And therefore, the Ashtavakra Gita was a great contribution from his efforts of wanting to seek the reality, isn't it?
Yes, this is how it goes on.
I think in the previous answer, you also gave us clarity on something very important that probably most of us are apprehensive about. If we study Vedic knowledge, then we get influenced to renounce our materialistic life. That's something that most of us have this notion about. So now I think most of us are relieved with that doubt. So is there anything that we can start off with to understand something about the Vedic wisdom in this context? Is there some simplified version of this whole thing where we can just see a tiny little book and feel confident that I can also read through? Can you please guide us about that?
So I would say Veda is just an ocean of knowledge. And then what we today, we refer to Veda as about 25,000 mantras in the 4 Vedas, Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, Atharva Veda.
Yes.
And the whole put together is about 25,000 mantras.
Right.
And then it's today we have the notion that it's very difficult to read. I finished the whole thing in about 1.5 years. In spite of doing all my other routine activities, spending about half an hour to 1 hour in a day, at least one reading you can easily do it. That's not a task at all.
Okay.
But that depends on the inclination towards that.
Yes.
So I am very closely associated with the organization called Sakshi. It is Sri Aurobindo Kapali Shastri Institute for Vedic Culture, founded by Professor R.L. Kashyap, and it is led by Dr. R.V. Jayaraj now.
Yes.
So there we have multiple. First is all the 25,000 mantras have been translated to English with the psychological meaning. That's a esoteric meaning, what we call it as, not the ritualistic meaning to do it outside. All this can be done inside, of course, with the equal importance to outside. So after finishing all these 25,000 mantras translation, Professor R.L. Kashyap, now he sat together and then within himself and said that, okay, he himself being a scientist for about 35 years, a computer science engineer, then he thought now he understands what is the capacity of an average individual.
Yeah.
He came up with some unique ideas of bringing it in a small booklets. Something like this is a small book on essentials of Rig Veda. So if you are able to see this, so this is essentials is in the this comes under about less than 100 pages.
Right.
There are 3 sections, you can go through that. This is a good book to start with.
Okay.
And then we'll get what is in the Rig Veda, what is a mantra, what is a rishi, and what is a chandas, what is a deva,
Right.
and they may also get many suktas which we hear something like a mantra pushpa, or even when you're doing a panchamrita abhisheka or
Right.
purusha sukta, what is commonly, or even in marriage or in the upanayana, then we have the commonly widely used in the worship, in routine worship, and then we don't know the meanings of that. So there, such a book of Veda mantras and suktas, you can see that is such a simple book. And then also there is a mention about what we can do in the Vedic way of worship, in a very simple way, without any outside aids. So such books, like if I know a mantra of say Gananantva Ganapatim Havamahe, which is commonly recited for Ganapati. Almost all. Most of us we are familiar with, even if you don't know verbatim, Gananantva Ganapati, we know it's a Ganapati mantra.
True.
Here it gives who is Ganapati in Veda.
Oh, beautiful. Okay.
Who is a Kavi? Kavim Kavinam. Such a beautiful one. When it opens up, Kavi is somebody who's got the vision, who can see forward, and then he is the Rishi himself. So Gana is the group, and then Ganapati himself, he represents the mantra in the Vedas. Then it goes on. So now you see, with one mantra, you are entering into the world of Vedas. Not necessarily, and then it is not that the Rig Veda starts with the first mantra, Agni Mile Purohitam Yajnasya Devam Ritvijam. It's not necessarily we start with first mantra and go on to the last. It's not. Because all are revelations and each mantra by itself is complete.
Wow.
The Rishi, when they get into that mode of complete darshana or shruti, what we call hearing or a vision of that, he gets a mantra. By itself it is complete. Or very popular, what we call Gayatri mantra for the Surya Savitru. It is from the famous Rishi Vishwamitra. Here it is Tat Saviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. That one mantra itself is sufficient for the lifetime. That's why it's very popular when we do the Sandhya worship, Sandhya Vandana. That's why everything revolves around that. So when we say what is that Tat and what is Savitur, what is Varenyam, that is what I'm adoring for. And then Naha is us, it's not me. The Rishi is not asking for himself, it is for all of us, the vastness with which he is bringing in. Now you see, one mantra can open up so many things. So this is how we can enter into the Vedas, and then there are very such small publication like for even for deity like Indra, Vayu, and then Saraswati. There are many such deities, which is small booklets of 50 to 100 pages. We can start with that. The once we feel that, okay, now I am ready for the complete the buffet of it, what it is, just with the after the starters, then we can go to the deep diving into how it can take it forward.
I'm sure the audience are super excited to know more about the work of Dr. R.L. Kashyap sir, but we'll definitely discuss this in the coming episodes. Thank you so much for enlightening us on all the inquiries that's made so beautifully, Doctor. Well, viewers, kindly take some time out after watching this video to contemplate on all the beautiful words, the explanations that Doctor has just shared with us. It's indeed a blessing to receive his guidance, as I always say in all the episodes. Next time, we'll meet you again with another useful insight on the Vedic wisdom and spirituality. If you like this episode, do not forget to share this with our loved ones and kindly comment on how you felt after receiving such beautiful, deeper insights on the basic questions that we often get entangled with in this spiritual journey. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again. Namaste. Thank you, Doctor.
Namaste.